In this video, we're going to put together the apron of the lathe, and here it is.
The split nut lever is on the right. Power feed is in the middle. This is for cross feed, neutral, and then longitudinal feed, all from the lead screw. This is the clutch that controls power from the lead screw, and the hand wheel. Looking from the back, this is the split nut, the lock plunger, the worm where the lead screw goes, and the worm gear, which along with the clutch sleeve make up the clutch. This is the hand wheel pinion, and it engages the rack under the lathe bed. Here's a look at all the parts. The main casting on the top, clutch parts are on the left. You can see gears and pins and shafts, split nuts, and the worm gear on the right. Here's the casting with all the parts removed. And you can see there is a seal area here for the cover on the back. And the oil level is about the bottom 1.5 inches or so. And then there are felt wicks that pull the oil up into the bearings for each of the shafts. When you look inside this thing, it's interesting, I thought, because the pattern for at the foundry, you can see they split it right in the middle. Now I got all the parts out with the exception of this shifter cam. I couldn't get it out, so I just left it in and worked around it. You can also see the pin for the plunger arm. The first thing we will do is to put together the clutch assembly, and here are all the parts for the clutch. The heart of this assembly are the clutch plates, and there are 9 of them. The 5 of the clutch plates have lobes on the outside. They fit inside the worm gear. If this is a motorcycle, this would be called the clutch basket. And there are 4 clutch plates that have splines on the inside, and they fit over the clutch sleeve. We're going to put all of the spline plates on and mark them with a Sharpie, and then lay them onto the clutch sleeve like they're going to be completed. And you'll see they're alternated, 9 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And when I hold with my left hand loosely, you'll see the plates are slipping. And that's how the clutch just normally operates. And then when I squeeze them with my left hand, they're tight. Slip, and then tight. That's how this clutch plate system works. Okay, let's assemble it. The clutch sleeve goes inside the worm gear, and then it is maintained there with a locking ring. I'll slip this locking ring on off camera, and there's what it looks like when it's in place. Now we put on each of the clutch plates, alternating them between the lobed and the splined plates. Now I dress these with 400 and then 600 grit sandpaper just to make sure there are no burrs or imperfection in these plates, so the clutch won't slip when it's or stick when we get it done. With all the plates in, you can see how this clutch will work. No pressure, and it spins freely. Then you put a slight bit of pressure and it locks up. The clutch is situated low in the apron casting, and it is bathed with oil constantly from the oil sump in the bottom. Now comes the drawbar and bearings. First goes on the thrust bearing washer, then the thrust bearing itself and another washer. These are bronze with steel bearings. Then comes the clutch plate disc. This is what presses against the clutch plates. You can see how these bearings then will roll as the clutch turns. Next comes a spring, which keeps the pressure off the clutch plates and the drawbar assembly. You can see how the spring keeps that clutch plate disc loose until you put the pressure on. There is a small pin that goes into the drawbar to engage a retainer bushing. This retainer bushing is held fast to the casting, and it prevents this drawbar from rotating as the clutch is moving. But at the same time, it allows that drawbar to move in and out as the clutch is engaged and disengaged. Before it goes on though, you got another thrust bearing, 2 washers, and a bronze housing on the bearings. This part of the clutch assembly is inserted through the back of the apron housing. This is the clutch handle, and this is the swivel nut. It screws onto the end of the drawbar. And it's also got a small cap screw that is used to tighten this swivel nut onto the drawbar so it will not move. Now, I was confused when I took this apart, and that's why I'm spending a little more time here, but this cap screw does not engage with the other side until it's below the surface. Then after about 2 turns, it begins to grab the other side and cinch this nut and tighten onto the screws. You don't need to remove the cap screw altogether. You just need to loosen it up through this access hole in the binder cam. This access hole is for your Allen wrench, and the only reason it's there is so you can get at this little cap screw. The swivel nut is connected to the binder cam through this 1/2-inch pin, which also serves as the pivot point. There's also a 1/8-inch pin that just keeps the handle from flopping down too far. And finally, a thick thrust washer that goes between the binder cam and the casting of the apron. When the clutch assembly is inserted into the casting, there's also this oil distribution ring. It just hangs onto the clutch and draws oil up out of the sump onto the sleeve and that pinion gear. I had to lower that ring into the casting as I slid the clutch in. Here I've already put the clutch lever on, and then at this point you would tighten it up to where you like it and then get ready to secure the retainer bushing with a set screw and a lock nut. The original set screw broke in half when I pulled it out, and the hardware store didn't have the right size, so I bought a screw and just cut it off and made one myself. I'd never seen a set screw break before. Put the locking nut on and we're done with the clutch. You can see how the swivel nut is clamped down hard on the threads of the drawbar by that little cap screw, and it's pulled it together. The next thing to go on is the rack pinion gear and the rack pinion and shaft. Pretty simple, secured with a taper pin. I have already installed the felt wicks and snaked them through the casting where they're supposed to go. Oil everything up and then slide it into place. The felt wick in the front is secured to the bottom of the casting. And you can see the felt wick in the back is secured to this oil trough in the back. You can also see that I've already installed the idler gear. You can see it in the left in the picture here. Pretty simple, but I failed to photograph that part. cut the excess wick off on the backside. And then slide it in, locate the taper pin, and I just put it in lightly for now, always, just in case you have to take it out again, and then we'll drive that taper pin home later. Now we can put the hand wheel pinion and shaft in. The taper pin installs the hand wheel. Felt wick goes in. Then you can just simply slide the pinion and shaft through from the back, and it slides in and then engages with the pinion gear. I made a slight modification to the oil system for the hand wheel pinion shaft, as recommended by the Lion renovation guide, to put an oiler right on top of the felt wick.